Nearly 2 weeks ago, a historic ice storm hit the mid-state, bringing down trees and power lines. Some people have been without electricity now for 13 days. That's 300 hours of no light or heat.
I haven't seen anything like this since SVB went under. We're talking about a complete collapse in home buying demand. Will this be a permanent dent in home buying demand for 2026? Are there other reasons that buyers are holding off on purchasing? Well, let's take a look at the data and then you all can decide. I always enjoy hearing your perspective. But first, if you do enjoy these Nashville housing market updates, make sure you click subscribe and notify. You will not get notified of my videos unless you click that, especially as the narrative changes. Right now, the narrative is changing. This is opportunity if you are in the market. So let's dig in. Now, whenever I see a dynamic where contracts fall and active listings increase like we're seeing right now, that creates a supply-demand vacuum. That's opportunity that happens in certain areas. Now, where are the contracts falling off? That's the question. Where are the listings increasing? Where is the motivation? If there is any, is it out there? And is there a way to get a little bit better value? Yes, 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 and yes. Because believe it or not, this is shocking to me, but prices in a neighborhood for a specific size in a specific location that all have similar qualities can range 20 to 25%. Let me show you what I mean. Let's go down here to Spring Hill. I had somebody ask for more in depth about Spring Hill. I'm going to touch on it today, but I think what I'm going to do, because I know a lot of you want more in-depth analysis, is maybe have a member channel. Setting up a member channel where I can do less clickbaity videos and more deep dives. You guys tell me what you think about that. But let's take a look at Spring Hill. So we got Williamson County side of Spring Hill and the Murray County side of Spring Hill. But what you can see here, we can see, I'm going to pick on a specific size. So we're going to do detached mid-size units here, 2,400 to about 2,800 square feet. And what we can see here is very clearly it dropped in value in 22 all the way into 23. It's been kind of bobbing up and down ever since. You can see kind of a seasonal up and down it's gone through. But if you look at sales price, remember this is a pretty tight range for size here. What we can see is the top most expensive are selling for $575, so not quite $600,000, and the least expensive are selling for about $485. Okay, and then it's dropped right here just recently down to $465. You have a range of $585, $575 to $475, $465. That's $100,000. $100,000 for this very tight range of this specific size. Normally, there's a very clear distinction between the most expensive houses in a neighborhood and the least expensive houses in a neighborhood. But what's not clear is where each individual house falls along that spectrum. And that's where negotiating strategy and data can help you get a better than average plan. Now, I'm going to show you some things here in just a minute that go right along with that. We're going to look at contracts. We're also going to look at a major warning sign that I see. If you are planning to buy, you must be careful of this. Let's just take a look at the data. Let's start high level here and just look real quick at what is happening with demand. Okay, so demand is down 12.8%. This is massive. And what makes this so massive is every single year at this time, we've had really strong increases in contract volume. Now, when we look at contracts by county, look at this 1.1%. Rutherford County, this is where Murfreesboro is. It's up 1.1%. That shows you just how bad 2025 was. But look at Williamson down 18%, Davidson down 19%, Cheatham 18%, Robertson 20%, Sumner, Wilson 5 and 12%. So you can see it's across the board, but wow, it's just so striking that Rutherford County is not down. If you are for sure buying right now, you want to pay attention to these trends, because if we can find areas where contracts are lower than they were and active listings are higher than they were, then that could present, maybe we could find a seller that's a little bit nervous about the market. They're seeing the same things. They're feeling what you're seeing on this chart, maybe we can have conversations with them. So let's take a look at that in just a minute, but I want to show you this. Look at active listings. Active listings are skyrocketing right now. Now, this is a direct correlation between contract volume dropping. In other words, had contract volume just stayed on track with where it was, active listings would be dropping right now. Now, that's very, very important because the trajectory for active listings going negative by the time we get to April and May is still very high. In other words, if I had to bet, if things keep going the way they're going, I would expect that the ramp to be much slower going into March, April, May than it was last year. We could actually have fewer listings by April, May, June. Now, that being said, fewer options if you're a buyer. If you're a seller, you're loving hearing that. However, it has to be because of the snowstorm. Now, I had a buyer that was planning to fly in, and he canceled his plans to come in. I know that this is impacting the migration coming into Nashville. It's just a matter of how much of this is impacting the contract volume right now. Now, my personal opinion is 100% of it, but I'm still waiting to see it bounce. Now, while it's noisy, are there some areas that we can look at? Are sellers motivated? And you can see seller motivation continues to decline. So this in no way indicates that sellers are motivated on an aggregate scale. But again, we're going to look at some neighborhoods in a minute and see if we can identify some patterns that would give you the upper hand if you are looking. Now, what I have found is that if we go to the neighborhood tracker, and this is a perfect example. If we look at West Haven, because I was looking at West Haven earlier. Okay, West Haven has 44 active listings. They had 27 last year. So they actually have more inventory now, almost double. I mean, it's significantly up from where it was last year. Look at contracts. Contracts are 10 less than last year. Now, the reason this is important is because had we not had those ice storms, and let's just assume that that demand lull is because of the ice storms, okay, that means that we would probably have 26 to 30 under contract right now. And this number would be 10 or 15 less, which means we would probably have close to the same amount of the active listings, close to the same amount of demand. But what do we have? We have 10 fewer under contract, and we have almost 20 more active listings. That is where opportunity comes from. If we were to see this price cuts, if this green bar were to spike all of a sudden, like it did in November of this last year, then we could see opportunity. I don't think sellers are, really nervous in West Haven right now, even though what I'm seeing is a bad trend for West Haven. But are there areas where it might be? Well, I was looking at another area that kind of came to my attention, and I have a buyer looking at Mount Juliet right now, and so I was kind of poking around Mount Juliet, and I came along this area down here just south of 40 off of Central Pike, and one thing I noticed here, look at this spike in active listings, this blue spike in active listings. Now, there's also a spike in contract volume, but that spike in active listings is huge, and the spike in contract volume just doesn't quite do it compared to where it was last year. So we're seeing a huge spike in active listings and a lull in contracts compared to where they were a year before. Is this setting up for problems? The answer is yes, but not for the reason you think. And this is what I wanted to show you. Okay, so if we look, this is one of the most important things you can look for. If we look, notice that red is new and orange is existing. Okay, what you want to see in a normal neighborhood dynamic is that the red would be on top and the orange would be on bottom, except for that's not what we're seeing here. What we're seeing is the red is lower than the orange. That means that we have a dynamic where new builds are selling for less than existing homes. Now, I noticed this because, again, I had a buyer and I'm like, I'm suggesting new builds to this buyer and they're open to new builds. The problem with new builds is their lots are so small. The vast majority of new builds, their lots are small. But in neighborhoods where you have similar sized lots, If you have new builds going for, and look at these to-be builds, going for well below where the existing, you're going to have problems if you're trying to compete with those new builds. And I'll just tell you, it will suppress your ability to get appreciation if you're a home buyer. Now, what does it look like if you're on RealTracs and I'm looking for new builds? You can see all the new builds popping up here, and here's the area we were just looking at. You've got 2 clusters of new builds. You've got Beezer with a new build development here, some Meritage homes. Look at this, look at the lot size though, 0.15 acres. Interesting. If you're in Mount Juliet, you have to be paying attention to what new build prices are doing, because they're going to be a direct competitor, and you've got to pay attention to replacement cost. Look at all these new builds. You've got to pay attention to replacement cost or cost to build. You got to be paying attention to new builds. Now, let me show you this in Franklin. Now, we're going to go to Franklin. I've got the same filter on here, which, by the way, the filter, it's just new and to be built. West Haven's been building. Look at these crazy $2 to $4, $3 million builds. But come up here. What do you see? There's absolutely no new builds. This is Fieldstone Farms. We've got Cottonwood. You go up all the way towards Sneed Road. There's no new builds up here. Okay, so if you're buying an existing home in this area, you're much less likely to get punished by the new builds than if you're in Mount Juliet right now. That's a high risk area for just getting punished by new builds. And you can see even look at all the new builds in Charlotte Park, in the Nations. That will keep putting pressure on your houses, especially if they're like kind builds. The townhouses have been just a complete disaster because you can just build and build and build and build and build townhouses, and that's exactly what's been happening. So always pay attention to what new build construction is around you, where the potential for new builds are. It can have a very big impact on what is going to happen. If you're just trying to figure out a high ratio of active versus contracts and you're in RealTracs, you want to click on the type you're looking for, and then just click active and under contract. I always limit these. I want to know what's gone under contract in the past month. If you've got a to be built that's under contract, it could be sitting there for months. That's not helpful to you. Okay. Now you can see the ratio of all the active listings and all the under contracts in a given area. If you want to see the most exaggerated example of this, just go to attached and look at condos and townhouses. You'll see just 1, maybe 2 under look, there's 20 listings right here. There's only 1 under contract. It feels like almost a 2-year supply in certain areas where there's condos. It's just so much supply and just few under contract. That's what you want to see when you look for the supply demand vacuum. It's so much easier to see in the condo townhouse space than it is in the single family space. So this is a dance. Whenever you see that vacuum, the chances are that it's a temporary, maybe even a 1 to 2 week vacuum, that what you'll see is that more demand will flood in that area and less demand in another area. And so those are the times that if you're a buyer, you can be a little bit more strategic about your offers. When there's a vacuum, that's what you want to look for. What I like, and I guess I'm plugging my app here, is that you can see that over time. So if we were looking like it, let's do Elizabeth Park. I always have someone ask me about Elizabeth Park. Very proud owner of Elizabeth Park. Okay, 11, now there's 8. There was 11 active listings last year. And if you zoomed in though, what you would see is that there was more active listings in July of last year than there had been in years and years and years. And if I was buying in Elizabeth Park, what I would look for is the spike with no contracts. Spike with no contracts. So you have November would have been a great time, and July would have been a great time. Now is not a good time. You're probably going to have double or triple the inventory at some point this year. And if I wanted to buy in Elizabeth Park and I could time it, I would wait for that spike of inventory, and I would wait for nothing under contract, and I would even look for that seller motivation, the green bars to go up. And that's when I would buy, because that's when you can get the best deals. That's when you can push the hardest on the sellers. Look for new builds, Look for those vacuum gaps. Nashville is not a market to just rush out and buy. Be patient, be careful. There's nothing wrong with renting. Nobody is trying to get you to buy. Just because I don't think home prices are crashing doesn't mean I want you to buy. I don't care. There are plenty of people buying in Nashville, and I want to help the people that have already decided they're buying. That's who I'm trying to help. Just be patient, be careful. Look for clues, look for hints that can give you just a slight advantage for the biggest purchase of your life. These little tiny things can change your wealth trajectory. Be careful out there. And with that, I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you next Saturday. Have a good weekend.